slap, 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 slap. Okay. Sorry, guys. We're gonna talk about Warlock today. This information is accurate as of March 10th, so it's very possible that by the time you watch this video, or by the time that this goes live, a lot of things will be different in some way. I think Warlock is the only class where both of the paragons are still called the same name, Hellbringer and Soulweaver. At least I'm like 95% sure those are still the same. But Hellbringer is your DPS paragon, and Soulweaver is your healing paragon. We're going to start with Hellbringer, but we do got to talk about some mechanics first. With Warlock, you're still going to have all your cursing related stuff and your soul sparks. The lesser curse applies to all enemies that you hit with your encounters that don't already have a Warlock curse consume or curse synergy in them. And it deals damage over the next 8 seconds and counts as a curse and doesn't stack. Now you have your soul puppet. This should be familiar to you guys as well, you Warlocks out there. If you're not a Warlocker, then this might be a little bit new to you, so I'm going to go over it anyways. Some of the Warlock powers can summon a soul puppet to fight beside you, and that's this little guy that's slapping things. Well, he's not right now. There. Now he's slapping things, but right beside me there, he looks like he's just so upset at somebody that he's just slapping them across the face repeatedly. He's like, you took all my hamburgers. But anyway, they get 50% of your maximum hit points in addition to their own base hit points, and then this tooltip has not been updated, so it still says that they get 100% of your deflection chance, lifesteal chance, and resistance ignored values. So basically, they're going to get your deflection defense, and maybe critical resist, if that's gonna, because there's no lifesteal anymore. If you attempt to summon another one when you already have one active, you're going to get a stack of soul investiture, and that increases the damage of your soul puppet by 20%, and it stacks up to 5 times. So you can get up to 100% bonus damage on your soul puppet. Your shadow slip is the same as before. When you first activate it, you have 100% damage resistance, and it decreases by 20% every second, down to 40%. And we got soul sparks. If you're not familiar with this, you gain soul sparks by casting at wills or dealing damage with certain spells. You can have up to 30 soul sparks, and each one increases your damage by 0.25%. So that is a possible 7.5% bonus damage, I think. Sorry, I'm bad at math. Something like that. And then when you're out of combat, they are consumed, and they heal you for 0.5% of your max hit points each time one is consumed. And you can have a minimum of, well, you can go down to 0, but you will regenerate up to 6. And lastly, you have Soul Scourge. This is the tab power that replaces the Warlock's Curse. And it costs up to 18 Soul Sparks to use, and it does heavy damage immediately, then adds a damage over time for 6 seconds. And the enemies do damage to each other because they're basically on fire. Their souls are on fire, and all their sins are going out to the enemies around them. Alright, now we got that out of the way, we're just going to jump straight into the powers. Like I've said in all the class videos, the powers are split in half between universal powers that both paragons have access to, and the other half are paragon-specific powers that only your chosen paragon can use. Except for dailies, which are 3 and 2. So we're going to start with at-wills, of course, because it's the first one on the list. These should all be familiar to you. They all function almost the same as Mod 15. Eldritch Blast, Dark Spiral Aura, Hellish Rebuke, and Hand of Blight. And my favorite is still Hellish Rebuke. It was my favorite prior to this, and it's still my favorite now just because it's the fastest and looks the coolest. Well, I guess it's not actually the fastest, but it's pretty nice. The third strike of Eldritch Blast deals damage to enemies around your primary target, and it deals twice as much damage to the primary target. Dark Spiral Aura has Curse Synergy, so whenever your cursed target is killed, you collect a Dark Spiral, and the maximum is still 3. Hellish Rebuke generates 1 Soul Spark for each damage over time tick, and if your target attacks you while you're attacking them with this, they take additional damage. I just think this one looks the coolest. That's why it's my favorite. Hand of Blight is the one where you can use it from at range and also melee range as well. And if you are attacking from the melee range, each hit reduces the target's damage by 1% for 5 seconds. We're going to add some Hellish Rebuke in here just because I really like it. So the 5 universal encounter powers that Hellbringers have are Killing Flames, Vampiric Embrace, Dread Theft, Hadar's Grasp, and Curse Bite. And all of these should be familiar to you. They are all the same as Mod 15. Killing your target with Killing Flame spawns a soul puppet, and the damage is increased based on the percentage of the target's missing hit points. I do want to say, before I get too far into this, that of all the classes, Warlock is the one with the most reasonable cooldowns. Like, none of them are ridiculously long. They're all, like, under 15 seconds, I think. Yeah, all the cooldowns, except for Hellfire Ring, are under 15 seconds. And when you look at other classes, you have cooldowns that are, like, all above 15 seconds, and it sucks. But I will say that Warlock feels really nice in that regard. Now, the next one, Vampiric Embrace. You rip the life essence from your target, and it converts 50% of the damage you deal into hit points up to the max of 20% of your own hit points. Lesser Curse is expended whenever you use this power, and you gain temporary hit points equal to half the amount stolen. Dread Theft is your typical laser beam, and it just refreshes the duration of your Lesser Curse on all the targets that you hit. But it's really nice to use. It's really fun to use in trash mob settings because you're just like lasers! And then Hadar's Grasp. You lift your enemy into the air and they're stunned, and you consume your Warlock's Curse, the target's lifted in the air for an additional second, and you summon a soul puppet. Lesser Curse is expended. Then we have Curse Bite. This has 2 charges now, and it rips the Lesser Curse out of all targets. That's the one that was really loud prior to this, so like, there, then we're gonna, yum. Now, the 5 Paragon-specific powers are Fiery Bolt, Infernal Spheres, Arms of Hadar, Blades of Vanquished Armies, and Hellfire Ring. And Hellfire Ring is the only one that is new here, and in my opinion it seems like it's pretty okay to use. But first we have Fiery Bolt. This is our highest magnitude encounter. You're basically just throwing a ball of fire at them. Next up on the list is Infernal Spheres. These spheres will seek out and damage the enemies that attack you, and while they're active, you can activate it again and they'll explode, and each sphere that you have active adds 1000 defense to yourself. Next we have Arms of Hadar. This is that giant arm thing that just goes thwap on top of the enemies. It doesn't have really any special effects or anything like that, it just knocks down the enemies. So it's basically like if you were to picture dropping a piano on top of the enemies, that's basically what it is. Except it doesn't hit that hard, so maybe like a foam piano. There we go. So yeah, I just invaded this person's personal space and they just ran away. Now, Blades of Vanquished Armies is those little like blade thingies that circle around you that I'd never really saw anybody use prior to Mod 16, and I'm not sure if people are going to use it now. It adds 5000 deflection to you, and the enemies that are around you are damaged by them. It lasts for 6 seconds, and if you have a Warlock's Curse on an enemy, the blades will periodically fling themselves at them. And lastly, we have Hellfire Ring. This is the new power, and unfortunately, I'm not level 77, so I can't show you what it looks like. But you create a ring of fire, and it deals damage to the enemies caught in the blast, and then creates a field of fire. So basically you're setting everything on fire, and then setting everything on fire again. Because the first time wasn't enough, so you gotta set them on fire twice. Okay, I'm sorry if the encounter descriptions were kind of bad, but we're on to the dailies now, and that's the fun part. The 3 universal dailies that Warlocks have are Accursed Souls, Brood of Hadar, and Tyrannical Curse, all of which are currently on live. Accursed Soul spawns a soul puppet, applies Lesser Curse to the targets, and damages them for 1400 magnitude, which, as you may notice, is significantly larger than the encounter powers that we have access to. Brood of Hadar holds your target in place, and then it spawns a bunch of bats around it that attack you, which they're not called bats, they're called horrors, but they look like bats to me, so I've just always called them bats. Tyrannical Curse places a devastating hex on your target. It curses them for 20 seconds and increases the damage received by you. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. So it makes you take 20% more damage? Whenever I first read it, I thought it meant the target takes 20% more damage, which I think is what it actually does. But the way that's worded is not good. The target is damage linked, so 15% of the damage you deal to them is given to other targets within 30 feet. The 2 Paragon-specific dailies for Hellbringer are Gates of Hell and Flames of Phlegethos, I think is how you pronounce that. But Gates of Hell, same as live. You open a Hell Gate, and a bunch of flames spew out of it. And if you get killed by this power in PvP, you can't be revived, so that sucks. Flames of Phlegethos, basically you're setting them on fire again, but you're just dripping liquid fire all over them. So it's like you opened up a volcano, turned it upside down, and dump it all over the enemies. That's pretty much what it is. And the intense heat deals 20% of that damage to nearby enemies. They just can't stand this liquid fire that's coming out of this volcano, so they also are dying. That was a really dramatic explanation. I apologize. That was very violent. Now on to class features. The 4 universal class features are Shadow Walk, Dark One's Blessing, Dark Prayers, and All-Consuming Curse. And I think all of these are on live. The Shadow Walk increases your run speed by 10%, and then your deflection and critical strike by 2500 each. Dark One's Blessing generates a soul spark and heals you for 1% of your max hit points every time a target with lesser curse dies. Dark Prayers causes you to gain 2500 defense when your hit points are below 30%. All-Consuming Curse allows your at-will powers to apply a lesser curse to the targets. Now, the 4 Paragon-specific class features are No Pity, No Mercy, Flames of Empowerment, Dust to Dust, and Deadly Curse. No Pity, No Mercy makes Hellish Rebuke no longer deal damage over time, and instead the damage of the initial hit and damage dealt back to attacks of— I found a typo! Damage dealt back to attacks. That's supposed to say attackers. The damage of the initial hit and damage dealt back to attackers affected by Hellish Rebuke are increased by 25%, and 2 soul sparks are generated on each hit. And critical hits grant you combat advantage. Flames of Empowerment is applied to targets whenever you hit them with your at-will powers for 10 seconds, and it increases your damage against these targets by 1% and stacks 3 times. And lastly, Dust to Dust, your damage dealt is increased by 5%, just a flat, passive damage buff. Deadly Curse causes your lesser curse to deal 25 magnitude damage whenever it is applied. Now, lastly for this Paragon, we have Feats. Feats are way different in Mod 16. You don't have the 3 feat trees or the heroic feat points. You just have 10 feats, and you can choose 1 from each pair listed here. So we're going to start from the beginning. The first pair is either Double Scorch or Power of the 9 Hells. Double Scorch causes the Soul Scorch damage over time to be increased by 10%, and that is your tab power. And Power of the 9 Hells makes your daily powers grant 12 Soul Sparks whenever you cast them. Next, Warlock's Curse or Parting Blasphemy. Warlock's Curse makes you deal 5% more damage to the targets that have lesser curse on them, and Parting Blasphemy deals 100% of your weapon damage whenever you remove lesser curse from a target. Next, we have Creeping Death or Soul Desecration. Creeping Death is applied to enemies whenever you deal damage with any power, and Creeping Death deals 10% additional damage as necrotic damage over 5 seconds. Soul Desecration, your soul puppet no longer dissipates, so it's up all the time. It deals 10% more damage, and you will automatically summon one if one is not active. So in case you want to see your soul puppet slap things all the time, like you can see mine over here has just been slapping things for the past hour and a half. In case you're into that, you want to watch your soul puppet hit things, that is the way to go. Next up, Risky Investment or Executioner's Gift. Risky Investment makes Soul Investiture grant a 5% bonus to your encounter damage for each stack that you have. And Soul Investiture is the extra stack whenever you try to summon a soul puppet when one's already active. Or Executioner's Gift makes your powers deal up to 10% more damage as your target's health diminishes. And the last pair, we have Wrathful Souls or Soul Spark Recovery. Wrathful Souls reduces your encounter cooldowns by half a second whenever your soul puppet attacks. And if you have a soul puppet up all the time, that could be pretty helpful, and the cooldowns are already low to begin with. That seems like it could be a good combination. Soul Spark Recovery, every 6 Soul Sparks spent on Soul Scorch reduces your encounter cooldowns by 1 second. This one doesn't seem as good, but I still can see the appeal of it, because if you're using Tab to use your Soul Sparks, which you probably will at some point, it gives you double the cooldown time compared to this one, but you're not going to be able to get that benefit as often, whereas your Soul Puppet attacks once a second. Well, that's it for Hellbringer, the DPS Paragon, but we are going to take a quick look at ability scores. Ability scores are a lot different in Mod 16. They have the same effects, each one across all classes, and there are no more primary or secondary ability scores. You just have your initial stat roll, and then you can pick whatever you need, depending on your class. So I went with Intelligence and Charisma. I'm not sure if that is the best allocation, because I do, especially for the other Paragon, Constitution would be much better in my opinion. But Intelligence for sure gives you a magical damage boost, which doesn't display properly at the moment. And then Charisma increases your companion stat bonus and your recharge speed. Now the reason I said Constitution would be important for the healing Paragon is because the way that Warlocks heal in Mod 16 is they damage themselves. A lot of their powers cause you to damage yourself to heal the enemies around you. And if you have more hit points, you'll be able to survive more easily. I just want to say that I really love my armor transmutes. This is like my favorite weapon set in the game based on solely appearances. It just looks so... it's intricate in a way. Has a lot of little pieces, and that makes it look really detailed and really pretty. Okay, back to the content. For Soulweaver, I'm only going to talk about the Paragon-specific powers, because I already talked about the universal ones. We're actually going to have a look at mechanics first, because the mechanics are slightly different in the Soulweaver Paragon. These four are the same, but Soulweaver has something called Essence Drain, and this is your tab mechanic. It replaces Soul Scorch from the other Paragon. What this does is it drains the essence of your enemy's souls. You can use this whenever you want, basically like an at-will power. It doesn't have a cooldown, and you can channel it as long as you want. But what it does is it deals damage to the enemies, restores your health and your soul sparks. And we are going to demonstrate it just because it looks like you're just sucking the life out of their bodies. I'm facing the wrong way. Hold on. Just eat their very souls. Yum! Look at all these souls. They're very tasty, very tasty. Could use some ketchup, though. Moving on to the at-wills. Essence Defiler or Soul Reconstruction. These are the two Soulweaver at-wills. So, Essence Defiler. The final hit of this combo generates 2 soul sparks. For Soul Reconstruction, you continually channel soul sparks into them, which heals them and yourself. And this is described as reconstructing the soul of an ally. So if you see something particularly scarring on the internet and you need some eye bleach, just ask for a Warlock soul reconstruction instead, and then you'll be just fine. I'm sorry, I'm in a funny mood today. I took a nap for like 5 hours, so I don't know if you consider that a nap or another full sleep, but I feel like I have more jokes in my head now, which is good. I like jokes a lot. The 5 Paragon-specific encounters for Soulweaver are Pillar of Power, Shatter Spark, Wraith Shadow, Harrow Storm, and Warlock's Bargain. So some of these should be familiar, but there is one new one, as you can tell by the placeholder icon here. Pillar of Power does pretty much the same as it does on live. It looks the same, it casts the same, you can have it up 100% of the time. When you're inside of it, and for 3 seconds after you leave, your damage and healing are increased by 10%. And allies who stand in it gain 5% damage. So this is a 100% 5% damage buff. So right there, that makes the Warlock the best buffer in the game right now. Because there is no other class that can have a 100% uptime on a 5% damage buff for the rest of your party and a 10% damage buff for yourself. Just think about that for a minute. Not even clerics have something like this. Now we have Shatter Spark. This shatters a large cluster of soul sparks, releasing the energy into yourself and nearby allies, so this will heal them. Costs 5 soul sparks. And since it's new, I will demonstrate that it looks like this. Ta-da! Now we have Wraith Shadow. I really love the encounter descriptions in this class, because they're so visual. That was a really bad word, but I think you'll get the point when I read. I do want to read this one because it just sounds cool. You summon shadows to smother your enemy in a sickly mass of darkness, applying a damage over time that siphons life to nearby allies. So this one also heals the allies, and it looks like this. One thing that needs updated for Warlocks that I knew about but forgot to mention is Soul Sparks. It says that you will drain your Soul Sparks to 6 and they'll regenerate back up to 6 if you have less, but for Soulweaver, you actually keep the max amount all the time. Even if you're out of combat, you'll have full soul sparks. Next up, we have Harrow Storm. This is another healing encounter. It damages enemies and heals allies who stand inside this churning storm of power in the targeted location. And that one looks like this. You get to choose where it is. It's about the size of what Bastion would look like. And then you cast it, and if you stand in this area, you get healed and the enemies are damaged. And it actually looks really cool. And applies curse, of course. Lastly, we have Warlock's Bargain. This is what I was talking about before. You sacrifice 20% of your maximum life and heal allies within 80 feet. So this is why I said it might be better to focus on hit points for this Paragon. It also has the added effect of increasing your outgoing healing by 10%. And it removes negative status effects from each target, one from each target. Now, the two Paragon-specific dailies are Immolation Spirits and Soul Pact. This daily is the one that causes those Immolation Spirits that just stand everywhere in the map now, and they generate 1 Soul Spark per second and last for 10 seconds. And lastly, we have Soul Pact. This is another one of those damaging things that I was talking about. You form a Soul Pact with up to 4 other allies. You damage yourself while healing and buffing your allies. So the damage resistance of the targets is increased by 10%, and you lose 2% of your maximum hit points every second. The 4 Paragon-specific class features for Soulweaver are Prince of Hell, Borrowed Time, Warding Curse, and Essence Mastery. So Prince of Hell increases your armor penetration by 2500. Borrowed Time causes the soul sparks that you consume on a power to heal you for 1% of your maximum hit points for each soul spark consumed. Warding Curse makes your lesser curse lower afflicted targets damage dealt by 5%. And Essence Mastery makes Essence Drain deal 5% more damage and healing. And Essence Drain is your tab power, where you just eat everything. Too bad this class feature doesn't grant you ketchup whenever you're using that. Alright, and since feats are different for each Paragon completely, we do have to go through those again, but that is the last section. So, the first pair we have Essence of Power or Essence of Time. And Essence of Power makes Essence Drain have a 15-second cooldown, but it grants 15 Soul Sparks immediately and does heavy damage. So Essence of Time makes Essence Drain grow in strength as you channel it, and after 2 seconds of channeling, you start to gain 2 Soul Sparks per tick instead of 1. The next pair, you have Dark Revelry or Transfusion Tactics. Dark Revelry increases the awareness and critical avoidance of your teammates within 50 feet by 2500. Again, this is another 100% uptime buff that Soulweaver Warlock has. So that is 2, plus the Warding Curse. If you use Warding Curse and All-Consuming Curse together, you have a 100% uptime of 5% less damage dealt of enemies. So that is 3 possible 100% uptime buff/debuffs. No other class has this. You have Transfusion Tactics. The powers that directly heal you now also heal all allies around you for 15% of the heal. The next we have Life Bind or Lingering Sustain. Life Bind creates a bond of life with allies within 50 feet, causing 25% of the damage they take to be redirected to you. This is also why you might want to focus on hit points if you're playing this Paragon. The effect no longer functions if your health drops below 30% and your defense is increased by 2500. The other option we have is Lingering Sustain. Each time your powers heal an ally or yourself, they are granted Lingering Sustain, and that heals for 200 magnitude over 6 seconds. Next pair we have Thief of Life or From the Brink. Thief of Life, self-healing from Soul Defiler, is now twice as effective. Or we have From the Brink, and as your life diminishes, you gain up to 10% increased incoming healing. And the last pair we have here are Spark Energy or Consuming Action. Spark Energy causes your consumed Soul Sparks to generate 10% more action points. Or Consuming Action, whenever you consume a lesser curse, you grant yourself and nearby allies 0.5% of their action points immediately. So you have either an action point buff for yourself, a larger one, or a smaller one for yourself and allies. So Warlocks seem to have quite good party synergy potential. Now, I am not a Warlock player. Warlock was my most hated class for a long time. It's not my most hated class anymore, but it's still second to the most hated at the moment. But, so as you can imagine, I haven't really done much group content with it, especially in Mod 16. I haven't done any yet. But just from looking at the powers that we have available to us, the possibility of group synergy and buff potential is quite high compared to other classes. So I'll have to get some updated gear. I'll probably want to level this one to 80, get the new gear on. I have some of it in my inventory, but I'm not level 80, so I can't use it. But I'm probably going to level this one to 80, check out the Healing Paragon, because that is what I'm pretty interested in. I am pretty interested in trying Soulweaver Healing, because it seems to have good potential. So I might have to do a video on that. Or what I probably am going to do is once I get my new PC, I probably live stream leveling this or my DC or both of them, depending on how often I plan on streaming, and then try some group content after that. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned a little bit about Warlock today. More Mod 16 Warlock anyways. Hopefully I wasn't too boring. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already for more Mod 16 or Neverwinter in general videos. I still have quite a few videos planned for Mod 16, but like I have said before, I have been extremely busy, so I fell really far behind. Life comes first, always. Unfortunately, that is the case. Well, I'm going to end it here so that you guys can stop listening to me now, so see you in the next video. Bye!